Hey Henchy, how you doing today? Good to see you.
Same here. Good to see you as well.
Excellent. How's your day been so far?
Well, we just woke up here. It's 10 a.m. So
I
got the
hear
kids
that.
off to school. That's basically it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's great to get off to a fresh start for the day. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to speak with you today. So let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Henchy.
Okay. Well, my name is Henchy, and I am a marriage and relationship coach as well as a licensed social worker in the state of New York. And I really love doing and helping other people create long-lasting relationships that won't just disappear because of excuses like, oh, the feelings aren't there anymore, or the lust isn't there, or in hindsight, they didn't do enough research about the person and then they find out like horrible things, or they've been affected horribly by individuals. Um, I think it all started when I grew up. I grew up with divorced parents, and I was like on this mission. I was how was their love in the beginning? And then all of a sudden it vanished, right? Like what? And there's all different types of circumstances, and I'm not talking about extreme circumstances such as abuse or emotional abuse or whatever other extreme challenges that might contribute. But I was really thinking about it. And throughout my entire life, people would always come to me for love advice, which is ironic because I was the one kid without boyfriends throughout high school. And I picked up a knack on being able to listen and hear what other people want and really creating a system of how to go about relationships to make sure that it'll create a strong foundation and last for long periods of time. And so that became my passion project. So that's how it all started.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, like you mentioned, you came from divorced parents, and that would give you an example of things that may not work in relationships. So, when you look back before you started helping people with their relationships, what was that moment where you decided, okay, based on my experience, this is what I want to do going forward? And what was that period? What was going through your mind in that period when you decided that's what the path that you was going to take going forward?
I don't know if there's a specific moment. I do remember like when my mom started dating and she would bring home all these guys, and I would already have like a natural instinct of like, no, no, no. And I was like, you know what? I should get paid for this. That was like a funny thought that came through my mind. But I think it happened a lot more naturally and steadily. I think throughout high school and even starting college, people just would come and speak to me about it. And I naturally just was turned into, you know what? Like, if this is my skill, if this is my talent, I have a responsibility to use it. And if I can create a space where people feel comfortable to share and to want to learn and grow, then I should create it. And it just kind of took off from there.
Excellent, excellent. Now, like seeing your mother bringing different men with her, it would have some type of impact on you growing up as well, especially if those are not turning into long-lasting relationships, and maybe some of them were. But what kind of impact would you say that it had on you witnessing that at that stage?
So I think I was old enough where I already had a father figure in my life where I wasn't really impacted by the guys coming in and out because it wasn't like I was 7 years old and I'm seeing like all these people and getting attached and getting detached. I think the biggest impact was just more of I'm not going to date like that. Like, I'm going to date smarter and better. Like, why would I waste my time and turn around 6 months later and be like, oh, you know what? He's actually not for me. What do you mean? That's 6 months down the drain. And I am Jewish and Orthodox, and the way we date is a lot more intentional. It's not in the Orthodox world, you're not really dating for fun. You're not really dating in high school. I mean, you do find people that do, but it's a lot more with intentional. So when you date, you're going in with a concept, with a goal. And seeing my mom, who is an Orthodox, date without intention or with an intention, but not having the skill to place the intention in the beginning of her dating, which makes her waste 6 months because she only got the answers she needed to make a decision 6 months down the road. I was like, not for me.
Yeah, but so would you say that you've always been intentional with your dating by witnessing your mother's dating?
Always, always.
Excellent. Now, like, we all go through different like struggles in relationships that we've had in the past, and we navigate through those to get to where we are now. So, like, that being said, what would you say some of your struggles have been in previous relationships, and how did you navigate through those to get to where you are now?
It's a good question. Um, I think the biggest thing was getting out of my own head. Dating, and I tell all my clients, is an emotional mind game. It's a roller coaster. Sometimes you never know where you stand. Sometimes you're afraid to be transparent and ask where the other person stands. Like, what do you think about me? Like, are we on the same page here? And by holding those questions back, we just keep it all inside and we're just like, okay, so like, do I like him more than he likes me? Or like, do we have the same vision of the direction we're going in? And I think in the beginning of my dating journey, I was like going crazy. I was like, what am I doing? Like, does he like me? I'm waiting for that text message. And aside from all the exciting butterflies that comes with dating was the stress of I don't know where his head's at. So I think there was a turning point where I really liked this guy and I thought it was going phenomenally well. And then I get a text message one morning saying, I think we're on different paths and like whatever. It was like a whole breakup spiel. And I remember thinking to myself, why did I not pick up on this? Like, why is this coming up as a shock for me? I really thought this was going well, and I was so heartbroken. And I remember thinking to myself, how could I have prevented this? Like, this is not okay. Why should I be going through this emotional brain like devastation? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a lot more transparent. So since then, it may sound a little crazy, but like I said, we date very intentionally. So every person that I was set up with or went out with was also coming with the same intention. I was super upfront at the end of each date. I was like, okay, so how did this date go for you? Like, let's have a conversation as adults. Like, you don't need to tell me you want to marry me yet, and you don't need to tell me you want to break up yet. And if you do, that's fine. We're both adults. Like, how did it go? And from then on, it just went so much easier because we both, and even for the partners I went out with, they also shared it was so much nicer because you're both going home now with an idea of the other person standing, and you don't have to question it. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to be in this process of like turmoil of where this is heading. And is he going to text me back? And is he going to break up with me? Or is this all in my head?
Excellent. Yeah, they say hindsight is 2020. So when you look back at the things that you didn't pick up on, what were those signs that you kind of missed at the time that you saw afterwards that you would have picked up on?
I don't know if I went out with really like guys who had red flags that like, oh my gosh, this is not for me. And I wish I knew that in advance. I think the hindsight really was in terms of what I thought they had to offer and being devastated that it didn't work out, only to get married and realizing that that person really would not have been a good fit for me. As in the character traits that I needed or wanted in a partner, we kind of get lost in the frenzy of, oh, he's so good looking, or we had really exciting dates and we had a really good time and we're hanging out with each other and there's great chemistry, but we're not really fully evaluating the date. And then we walk away feeling, oh my gosh, he could have he's perfect for me, but for some reason he doesn't see that or etc. And then when you do find your partner, like, why did I ever think that person was right for me? Like, he's a complete opposite from the person that I married, right? I actually created a document, which is, I call it like the dating analyzing chart, which is where people go on a date and they come back and they sit down and analyze their date in a logical, educational way of what did I learn about this person on this date, aside from the fun and the chemistry and the butterflies. What practical information did I gain on these dates that I should pocket away to decide if I want to continue or not. And I find that that has been so helpful for so many people because you lose a lot of information when you're excited, right? Like you just think about the positive. You don't notice the little things like, oh, he didn't tip the waiter, so maybe like I don't like that. Maybe it's not a big deal for me. Or I noticed that he answered like his phone was on like a 30-minute conversation in the middle of a date, but everything else is so good. So like I'm just gonna disregard it. You know, like all these little things that we might disregard because of the fun butterfly feelings that we walk away with. So I think that was a big one.
So yeah, yeah. Good analogy of like how that plays out because I do notice that that kind of scenario that you mentioned does play out in people's lives. And sometimes when people deal with like kind of heartbreak or their relationship didn't work out, they tend to immerse themselves into their professional life because it's more controllable for them. But when they do that, sometimes they start to neglect their intimate side to the point that there's a gap between themselves and their intimate side over time. So, for people that have immersed themselves into the professional life so much that they've now created a gap between themselves and their intimate side, in your opinion, how can they start to bridge that gap again after neglecting it for so long?
I think the response I'm going to give can really be done to prevent it and also to heal the gap, which is, I know it's going to sound a little corny, but really self-care, right? What is the purpose of self-care? It's not so that you can just have an excuse to get your nails done or go to the spa, right? Like the idea of self-care is to take care of yourself and to get in touch with yourself. And to be in a space where you can see where you're at and see where you're feeling and to do things that make you feel good about yourself. That's ultimately the concept of self-care. So when you have immersed yourself in the workplace and you're kind of forgetting that place inside you that wants to be with another person and it's hard to get out of it. Um, I really think that by doing something for yourself where you can get in touch with where you're at can heal it because self-awareness is the first step. And then you can decide, okay, well, where do I need to go from here? I know that I'm feeling hurt or burnt out, and that's why I've created this gap. Okay, well, what do I need to do to not feel burnt out? You know what? Maybe let me start slowly. Maybe just go on a dating app, put my toes in, see if anybody's around, and then I'll make that decision if I want to say yes or no to a date. Or maybe I'll just go to a social gathering where there's no pressure or commitment. Um, but you first need to take care of yourself and see where you're at. And that self-care should allow you to tap into where your starting point is, and to what the source of why the gap was created to begin with.
So essentially, staying in touch with like yourself throughout like even your professional days and days of time away from work. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but being intentional with the self-care, as in don't just like, oh, I'm gonna go get my nails done, or I'm just gonna go do this. It's like, wait, okay, so does getting my nails really create a space where I can tap into what I'm feeling and where I'm at? And will it make me happy ultimately? It might make me happy, but it might not be the best space for me to figure out where I'm standing. Maybe a hot shower with music or like a spa where it's quiet and your mind is able to wander, or going to the gym where you can think about things on your own. Like whatever choice you're making, sometimes you need something a bit more extreme, like a solo vacation for 3 days. Now, is this vacation going to be an activity vacation where I'm distracted from my mind and where I'm coming from? Or am I going to create spaces on this vacation to really tap into myself with where am I? Why am I hurting? What is contributing to this gap? What do I need to continue on to my dating life? And is this vacation going to make me happy to be able to start fresh when I come back home? Does that
Excellent,
make sense?
excellent. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does for sure. Now, like, oftentimes in relationships, we hear of gender roles being in a relationship where someone tends to take the lead in the relationship and the other person chooses to follow in that relationship. But sometimes, people can feel like they're being neglected in terms of like, okay, these gender roles are not really fitting because you seem to not take me on board. Like it seems to be your way all the time. How come it can't be my way sometimes? And I noticed that like in your like kind of workspace, you pay attention to your boss, but you don't pay attention to me in the same way, like because you feel like, there's like a difference between me and you. And this can cause some kind of back and forth sometimes. So in that context, what is your viewpoint on gender roles within relationships?
So I think with your question, I think we're targeting a lot more than just gender roles. I mean, I think there's, you know, talking to your, giving your boss the same energy and not giving your partner or spouse the same energy. I don't know if that's necessarily contributing to gender roles or if it's contributing from something else. But if we're going to go directly to gender roles in relationships, such as, like the male always taking out the trash and the female being more of a homebody within a marriage or within dating, how come I can't pay for the date or like really being stuck? Is that kind of where your question is, or is
Right.
it
So like in terms of like set roles within like the relationship that people don't necessarily always feel aligned with, but they feel like they go along with and things like that. Yeah.
so my modality is based off of Judeo-Christian values, which is a bit more traditional, where we do have a concept of a male space and a female space within relationships. Now, that doesn't mean those roles can't change depending on scenarios or situations and depending which skill is stronger. For some people, you might have a more masculine energy as a female, and for males, you might have a more female energy. It's a lot more intrinsic than the outer gender, reality. But we do inherently believe that there is something inherent with us that it has a stronger power or space. So my femininity holds a lot of power, and that creates one kind of impact, whereas a male will have a more specific energy that will have an impact in different ways. And we believe that we're equal but different. So what happens is that I think the idea of us and how I go about it is let's embrace our space, but understand that we're equal. And the example I always give is if you have two different students in a classroom and one is suffering with dyslexia and one is super smart and doesn't need to pick up a book, and they both study really hard. One gets an A and the student with dyslexia gets a C, but they both studied really hard, right? Are those grades equal? One inherently is starting at a different place. So how can we create an equal grade system for somebody who's memorizing a book or worked hard, but like they naturally are book smart, and one is working really hard for that C or B. That C might be considered an A in that person's mind because for the past few years, all they've been getting were Fs because it was so hard for them to make it, right? So we can't view it as we can't view this or measure our roles with a measuring stick that is meant for everybody. We have to acknowledge that we're all different, we all contribute differently, but we're equal in value. So, whereas I have something to offer that's different than my husband, we are valuably equal. We both are valued at 1,000% or however measurement you want to describe. But what we have to bring to the table is very different where I can multitask with my children and my household duties and work. He can technically do that too, but he definitely gets burnt out significantly faster than I do. So, can I ask him for help? Yes. Does he help out? Yes. Are we leveled at the same way? No. And I
Right.
think that's how I view gender roles, where we need to stop putting on this blinder or glasses of equal, equal, equal. We're all equal in physical ability, emotional ability, intrinsic ability, and like it's just not going to work like that because then you're constantly dividing everything in half, everything in equal. Whereas one person might show up on a day and be like, you know what, I'm sick, I can't give my equal share. So what are you going to do now? You're going to be like, oh, well, sorry. Like, this is how relationships work. We're equal. We have to do. No,
Right.
we're
So like,
valued equally. And that's the motto. That's the goal, is that
right.
we see.
Okay. So like when you're saying equal, you're talking about complementing each other in different ways to create some type of harmony. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, but also really acknowledging that we're equal in value, as in just because I'm not doing something or like it's not my expertise within the relationship, I still respect and value that person equally to myself. And that's how we see each other. It's not based off of what you could contribute. Your contribution is natural to your gender on a spiritual and intrinsic way. Sorry about that. And the and the contribution is not being measured equally and our value as an individual is there.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes a lot of sense. Like some people, sometimes they get frustrated with the whole like relationship dynamics, like we was talking about, and they feel like maybe the way their relationship is set up is not conducive to them. So they start looking at different types of relationship dynamics. They start looking at things like monogamy versus non-monogamy and seeing if there's something more tailored to their personality that would be more suitable for them. So, with that being said, what is your viewpoint on monogamy versus non-monogamy in relationships?
I think one has less drama than the other. That's for sure. I'll tell you from a value point of where I stand, we very much are pro-monogamy and believing that our intentions and our energies should really be focused on one person. Now, I have had clients who were part of different communities that were monogamous, such as like the swinger world, etc. And it is possible to make it work. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice to make it work? And so far, I've met people who are part of it, and there's always one partner that feels that they're sacrificing more to create and sustain that kind of relationship. Whereas in a monogamous relationship, you're sacrificing significantly less. And what do I mean by sacrificing? I mean, for example, I'm not saying all women, and I would never make a blank statement, but on a general concept, at least I can talk for myself. I would be significantly jealous if my husband now started bringing in another woman into the relationship because he felt like he was too big for one person. He needed to, spread his energies amongst multiple people. And that will cause conflict within me and within my desire to be with that person. And I would have to fight and work significantly harder to be with this person because I have to work through now all these feelings and energies and emotional turmoil that's coming along with sharing him with another person. Now, I've watched all the documentaries on the Mormons and, I've seen this reality shows of like, three brothers and a wife or, sister wives. And you can for sure gain a lot of positive traits by spreading the love. But really, it ends up taking away from each person because what my husband would have to give to me is now being spread between two women. So that means I'm automatically going to get less. And I think that if somebody's looking to expand their relationship in that way because they feel like they're missing out, then I think the bigger question would be, what do you feel like you're missing that this other person isn't giving to you? And would you really solve that by bringing in another person? Because maybe you just don't want to admit that this person's not right for you, and maybe you just have to look a little harder for somebody that will fill everything that you need. But you love this person, right? I find that a lot of our motives are driven by something we call love, right? We love this person, we don't want to let go of this person. They're just not giving us this, but I want to hold on to this person. So, let me just include somebody else, and then we'll all be Gucci. But the reality is that what really is love and is that really going to be fair in the long run of things, in the grand scheme of things, or rather? So, if you're asking my opinion, I would never judge or guide somebody to make a choice that wasn't right for them. And if somebody chose to not be monogamous, then I'm just a tool to help them make it successful. I do see that there's a lot more challenges that would come along with it. The same way with any relationship that, intermarriage in terms of different religions, that comes with a lot more drama. But that doesn't mean it can't work. It doesn't mean that you can't be happy in it. But naturally, I'm very much inclined to prefer monogamy relationships and believe that once we make a choice to invest in somebody, all of our energy should go to that person and it'll create a lot more of a foundation and platform with less challenges. There's enough challenges that come with being in a relationship. Why would I take on another person and a lot more challenge to now have to deal with two people in it?
Right,
That's
right,
kind
right,
of my
right.
viewpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, so you did mention jealousy, which I do want to talk more about. But before we talk about that, like, do you feel like there's something missing in a relationship if someone decides to open it up? Do you feel like non-monogamous relationships means that there's something missing in there? That's why it became open.
I think for whatever motive somebody might have, usually it's surrounding wanting to fill a void, right? Because why else would you need another person? Whether it's an intimacy void where you feel like your partner, you love this partner in every way, but you feel like she's not comfortable or he's not comfortable meeting your intimate needs of what you want, or maybe it's a specific style that they are not comfortable with, but you feel like you need this energy, or it's an emotional void, or if it's just a trying to spice things up. You know, I've heard a lot of this in my clientele where we tried this to spice things up, and they'll go into different communities and they'll try different things. So I'm not saying that that's the main reason, but I do think that when you feel like you need to include somebody else, generally it's you have to ask why. Why do I feel the need to include somebody else? And generally the why leads to, well, because I feel we need to do this, or because I'm missing this. I've never heard, at least I haven't met anybody, and I'm open to meeting anybody who can say, I really just like having two wives. Well, why? Or two partners. Why? Why? What is the one person not giving you enough of that you like too? And the people that are participating probably either A, like it too, because it gives them a certain sense of freedom. And I think that's what ultimately does. It gives you a sense of freedom that you wouldn't have in a monogamous relationship, right? With monogamy, you have boundaries, you have rules within intimacy, within emotional intimacy, within relationships of the opposite gender, even the unwritten rules. With open relationships, there's a lot less boundaries, and that freedom is what might attract people.
Yeah. So speaking further on jealousy, jealousy can arise in monogamy or non-monogamy. Like an example for a non-monogamous situation would be like you're spending more time with this person than you're spending with me. Or in a monogamous situation is I notice that you're looking at this person or talking to this person a lot. So how can the person that's been accused of these things communicate to their partner that there's nothing to be jealous about? And how can the person that's feeling these jealous emotions start to deal with their emotions of jealousy?
Wow, I feel like that's a, a good question. Hopefully, I can give it a short answer. Um, I think we break it down into two. First of all, there's measurements of jealousy, right? Like if I find that my spouse is going and like flirting with another woman versus if he caught a glance, or versus if he liked a photo, in all of these situations, you have to evaluate, well, why am I feeling insecure? First of all of these things should make me feel insecure, because if he's enough, why would he feel the need to flirt with somebody else? Yada yada yada, right? Um, In Orthodox Judaism, we have a few regulations that I like to share with my clients, certain boundaries that create security in a relationship. And to combat jealousy, we need to increase our security. When we feel secure in a relationship, there's a lot of things that we might perceive that somebody might be jealous of, whereas we won't be fazed by it because we feel so secure. Our partner makes us feel so secure that we're not concerned. And then there are some actions that really do create feelings of jealousy, and the jealousy might be necessary. For example, if my husband is working with a whole bunch of females, I might feel very insecure. Oh my gosh, all these women are prettier than me, or younger than me, or their body isn't changed yet because they haven't had children. But if my partner makes me feel secure, makes me feel beautiful, then I won't necessarily be challenged by that. But if he does something to make me feel and cause doubt, such as crossing a line, in Judaism, there's a rule that a female and male cannot be alone together in a room if they are not married or related, like a brother, sister, father, etc. Well, if he's never going to be secluded alone in a room with the opposite gender, well, then I never have anything to worry about. Now, there's a reality where people feel like that might not be realistic, but you can include that kind of style boundary. If I have clients that are like, my husband wants to go clubbing with his friends. That made me feel insecure, because what is a club? You're dancing in a mosh pile of people with male and females, and what are you gonna do? Expect your husband to just stand in the corner with his friends? Like, no, he's obviously gonna be surrounded by females. So you have to evaluate, is this responsible for the relationship? And is this gonna make my partner feel insecure? And if there's a reason that you think that your partner may feel insecure about it, then that's an action that you should not do. Now, if you are specifically jealous over certain things, then you could work on just figuring out, why am I jealous? What do I need from my partner to make me feel secure? to not be jealous. And I'm not talking about people who have like a possessive craze jealousy where like, oh my gosh, like, like controlling people who make their partner stop hanging out with their friends and their family because there's like obviously there's a lot more issues there. But if we're talking about general jealousy, usually combating it with security helps out.
Right,
Also, people don't start being ugly because we got married, right? Like, it's not like, okay, now I'm the most gorgeous person in the world, and every female on this planet is now ugly, and my husband is only attracted to me. The reality is that people still look like people, and like our eyes are attracted to pretty things. The same way, if you put a nice website in front of me and a not visually pleasing website, my eyes are going to just go straight to the nice one and even choose the nicer website to use because it's more visually pleasing, even if it's not as practical. So that's the same way when you're on the street. If you see a beautiful, pleasing person, your eyes are going to go straight to that person. But that look can last for a second and be like, whatever, they're not my wife, right? Like it's like celebrities. I can admit that somebody looks attractive, but I don't have a desire to go chase after them because I'm happy with my spouse and I'm secure with my spouse. But if that look is now lasting 30 minutes or 1 minute and you're giving like the once over, well, that's disrespectful to your spouse or partner. That's disrespectful.
right,
And by
right.
making it noticeable, yes, you are creating feelings of insecurity and you need to own up to that.
Right, right. So essentially, it's more to do with how secure your partner can make you feel rather than the incident or the situation itself, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So unfortunately, we have run out of time. I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer, but there is one more thing
Okay.
I'd like to ask you about. Like, sometimes when there is jealousy, there's a reason for it because, infidelity may have happened. Someone might have stepped out in the relationship. And when this happens, they don't always communicate what has happened, but when they do, the partner needs to make a decision whether to stay in this relationship or move on from this relationship. So, with that being said, what is your opinion on forgiveness after infidelity in a relationship?
The biggest thing that makes the relationship work is trust. And when trust is betrayed like that, in that sense, the person needs to decide for themselves, do they think that they can rebuild that trust with this person? Because what is going to be required of the person who stepped out of the relationship is consistency, reliability, and dependability. And that's going to take a long time, depending on their spouse. It's going to take a really long time.
Yeah,
So the partners now need to evaluate, A, the person that was hurt in the relationship needs to evaluate, okay, right now I'm really hurt. I need to evaluate if my relationship is worth the struggle it's going to take me to rebuild that trust and the ability to work through all of my now insecurities that's come up because we're constantly going to be like, okay, am I giving him enough? Well, we need to break that dialogue and we have to work on I am enough. That person did something wrong and he has to work through why he felt he went out. It shouldn't be my problem. I just need to work on and focus on am I going to be able to give a space for my partner to build on that trust again? The
absolutely.
other spouse needs to evaluate, are you willing to put in the amount of time and energy? I find that sometimes people come to me with infidelity and be like, well, I've been showing up for a month. I've been there. I've done everything. Like, how much more is she going to punish me? And I'm like, she's not punishing you. You've created an insecurity in her, and she's trying to heal that. And you might have to do that for 6 months. You might have to do that for 2 years. You might have to keep working and showing up until that insecurity is healed. And that insecurity, at least in women, it any insecurity we have takes a long time to heal. So this might never be a completely closed door. It might get better, but then it might not be completely shut. So if you really love this woman and really want to make this work, you need to evaluate, can I spend a lifetime showing up at 100% in reliability and dependability and consistency to heal the insecurity that I've caused? And if they feel like they're not up for that, then that's where the choice leads.
Right,
And
right,
that's
right,
where both partners need to decide.
right, right. So, Henchy, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Where can
Mhm.
people find you, find out more about you, and find out more about what you do?
Well, I'm on Instagram as Cohen Henchy. They can for sure, I mean, if they see my face, they will recognize the profile photo. And or you can email me at Cohen, Cohen, Henchy, Henchy at gmail.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have or continue conversations that they might feel like could have gone on a bit longer. And I'm happy to help anybody and reach out and talk about what I do. And I really appreciate you giving me the space and the platform to come on. I love meeting new people and talking about what I do. It's a little bit of my passion. So I
You're
like
very,
sharing it with others. So thank you.
you're very welcome, Henchy. And for the viewers, all of the links to her socials will be in the description, so you can contact Henchy and find out more about what she does. Once again, Henchy, thank you so much for coming on. Any
Thank
final
you.
words before we wrap up?
Anybody that's trying to create healthy relationships, just make it intentional. Make every action you do intentional. I think that's the biggest advice, and I think that's what's going to get you through. And I hope that whatever relationships people are struggling in end up creating beautiful things together with beautiful people. And for those that are searching and yearning, your time will come. Just keep at it.
Thank you, Henchy.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.